"She's just a security guard," he told the wedding guests. Then someone screamed, "Holy shit, she's on the news." The champagne glass slipped from his trembling fingers. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor as I stood in the corner of the grand ballroom, invisible in my simple black dress. 300 guests laughed and clinked glasses, celebrating my brother Daniel's perfect wedding to his perfect wife, while my father commanded center stage like the born showman he'd always been. I shouldn't have come. 3 days ago, I was crouched in a Colombian jungle, rain hammering the canopy above as my team prepared to storm the compound that would change everything. Operation Silent Thunder. 18 months of my life. 18 months of living in safe houses, speaking in code, and becoming someone else entirely. The largest cartel takedown in DEA history, and I'd missed it all to watch my father perform his greatest hits. "My boy Daniel." Dad's voice boomed across the dance floor, champagne glass raised high. "Now there's what you call a success story. Regional manager at 32, corner office, company car, everything a father dreams of for his children." The crowd erupted in polite applause. Daniel, resplendent in his custom tuxedo, beamed like a golden god receiving his due worship. His bride, Sarah, gazed at him with the kind of adoration reserved for war heroes and movie stars, not insurance salesmen who'd never ventured beyond the county line. Dad's eyes swept the room until they found mine, and I watched his expression shift, just slightly, like clouds passing over the sun. "Now, I love both my children equally," he continued, and I felt my stomach clench with familiar dread. "But sometimes, as parents, we have to face hard truths. Here it comes. My daughter Rebecca tried college, bless her heart, but it just wasn't for her. She works for the government now, security work, I believe. Nothing wrong with that kind of job, mind you, but it's not exactly what you dream of when you're changing diapers and teaching them to walk." The words hit like bullets, each one finding its mark. Around me, faces turned, some pitying, others uncomfortable, a few openly dismissive. Aunt Carol patted my shoulder with the condescending gentleness reserved for wounded animals and disappointments. 24 years. 24 years of serving my country, and I was still just Becca, who couldn't finish college. I'd sacrificed everything for this work. Relationships that withered under the weight of classified secrets. Holidays missed because cartels don't observe Christmas. Sleepless nights wondering if this operation would be the one that got me killed. I'd been shot at in Mexico City, held at gunpoint in Panama, and had survived 2 assassination attempts that officially never happened. My phone vibrated against my thigh. A text from Director Martinez. "Hayes, turn on Channel 7. Now." I slipped out of the ballroom like smoke, grateful for the shadows that had hidden me my entire life. The hotel lobby was nearly empty, just a bartender polishing glasses and a tired businessman scrolling through emails. The massive television above the bar flickered with the evening news. And there I was. What officials are calling the most significant anti-narcotics operation in decades, the anchor was saying, his voice grave with importance. The DEA has successfully dismantled the notorious Santos cartel in a coordinated international effort led by Special Agent in Charge Rebecca Hayes. My official photograph filled the screen, the confident woman in the navy blazer who stared down cartel bosses and briefed senators. She looked nothing like the invisible daughter in the simple black dress. Agent Hayes, a 24-year veteran of federal law enforcement, has been credited with revolutionizing how American agencies approach international drug trafficking organizations. Sources close to the investigation say she personally went undercover for months, infiltrating the cartel's inner circle in what experts are calling one of the most dangerous operations in DEA history. The footage switched to aerial shots of the raids, helicopters descending on jungle compounds, agents in tactical gear, massive seizures of drugs and weapons. I remembered every moment, the weight of my Kevlar vest, the adrenaline coursing through my veins as we breached the doors, the look in Roberto Santos's eyes when he realized who had been feeding him information for the past 6 months. The operation resulted in 37 arrests and the seizure of over $2 billion in drugs, weapons, and assets. Agent Hayes, who heads South American operations for the DEA, is expected to be nominated for administrator when Director Martinez retires next year. Rebecca. I turned to find Aunt Carol approaching, wine glass in hand, her face flushed with alcohol and gossip. Honey, what are you doing out here? You're missing your father's big speech. She followed my gaze to the television where they were now showing photographs of the arrested cartel members. Her face scrunched in distaste. Terrible business. All this drug violence. Thank goodness you have that nice, safe government job, not like those poor agents who have to deal with such awful people. If she only knew that 48 hours ago, I'd been sharing meals with those awful people, laughing at their jokes, pretending to be their friend while secretly recording every word they said. Come on. Carol linked her arm through mine with the forceful cheer of someone who'd had too much champagne. Your father's about to give another toast. You know how sentimental he gets. We walked back into the ballroom just as Dad tapped his knife against his champagne flute. The crowd quieted with the practiced ease of wedding guests who knew their cues. 300 faces turned toward the small man in the ill-fitting tuxedo who somehow commanded attention through sheer force of will. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad began, his voice carrying that familiar boom I remembered from Little League games and school plays, I want to talk about success tonight. About what it means to make something of yourself in this world. My chest tightened. I knew this speech. I'd heard variations of it at every family gathering for the past 20 years. My son Daniel here. Dad gestured broadly toward the head table where Daniel sat like a king receiving tribute. He's everything a father could ask for. High school football captain, college graduate with honors, worked his way up at the company through hard work and determination. He's got the house, the car, the beautiful wife. Dad's voice cracked with emotion. He's what we call the American dream come true. Applause rippled through the crowd. Daniel stood, raising his glass with practiced humility, his smile bright enough to power the chandeliers. Now, Dad continued, and I felt every muscle in my body tense. I love both my children equally. But sometimes, as parents, we have to acknowledge that our kids take different paths. My daughter Rebecca, well, he paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound too harsh. She's had a harder time finding her way. Dropped out of Georgetown after 1 year, couldn't settle down, never gave me those grandchildren I keep hoping for. The familiar burn started in my chest, the same fire I'd carried since childhood when Dad would brag about Daniel's grades while barely acknowledging my achievements. The same fire from high school graduation when he talked about Daniel's football scholarship for 20 minutes while mentioning my acceptance to Georgetown as an afterthought. She works for the government now, Dad continued, oblivious to the television screens throughout the hotel showing my photograph. Some kind of security position. Nothing wrong with that work, mind you, but it's not exactly what you dream of for your little girl when you're teaching her to ride a bike and helping with homework. Around me, guests were nodding sympathetically, some glancing at me with a kind of pity usually reserved for people with terminal diagnoses. A few were scrolling through their phones, still unaware that the woman being dismissed on stage was the same one being hailed as a hero on their screens. The point is, Dad raised his glass higher. Success isn't just about what happens to you. It's about the choices you make, the dedication you show, Dad. The word came out louder than I'd intended, cutting through his speech like a blade. The entire ballroom turned to stare at me, the invisible daughter suddenly visible. Dad's face registered surprise, then mild annoyance at being interrupted during his moment. Rebecca, honey, I'm in the middle of giving a toast here. I need to correct something, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. I started walking toward the front of the room, my heels clicking against the marble like a countdown timer. You said I dropped out of college. Dad's confident smile faltered slightly. Well, yes, you left Georgetown after your freshman year. I left Georgetown, I said, still walking, to attend the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center at Quantico. I was recruited by the Drug Enforcement Administration. A murmur went through the crowd. Dad's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. You said I work in security, I continued, now halfway to the front of the room. 300 faces tracked my movement like spectators at a tennis match. I'm actually a special agent in charge for the DEA. I've been with the agency for 24 years. The murmuring grew louder. Someone at a table near the front was staring at their phone, then at me, then back at their phone, their mouth falling open. You said I couldn't settle down, I said, stopping directly in front of the head table where Daniel sat frozen, his champagne glass halfway to his lips. Last month, I received the Administrator's Award for Excellence, the highest honor the DEA can bestow. This week, I led the operation that dismantled the Santos cartel, the largest drug bust in federal history. The room fell dead silent. Dad's face had drained of all color, his champagne glass trembling in his grip. Holy shit, someone whispered loud enough for the entire room to hear. She's on the news right now. Phones came out across the ballroom like a coordinated military operation. I heard gasps, saw faces snapping from their screens to me and back again, watched as the reality of what I was saying penetrated their alcohol-fogged comprehension. Rebecca Hayes, someone read aloud from their phone, their voice growing stronger with each word. Special agent in charge, DEA South American Operations, led 18-month undercover operation resulting in $2 billion in seized assets and 37 arrests of high-ranking cartel members. Dad's champagne glass slipped from his nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor with a sound like breaking bones. The crystal shards scattered across the white marble, catching the light like fallen stars. You said success comes from the choices we make, I said, my voice steady and clear in the echoing silence. You're absolutely right about that. I chose to serve my country instead of serving myself. I chose to spend 2 decades infiltrating drug cartels, building cases against some of the most dangerous criminals on earth, protecting American children from the poison these organizations spread. I looked around the room at 300 faces staring back at me in stunned silence. Neighbors who'd watched me grow up, family friends who'd patted my head at barbecues, relatives who'd ridden me off as the family disappointment. I chose to put my life on the line instead of sitting behind a desk selling insurance policies to people who already have too much coverage. I chose to matter. The silence was absolute now, broken only by the soft ping of phones receiving notifications as news alerts spread across social media. I never told any of you what I really did, I continued, my voice softer now but somehow carrying even more weight, because I hoped that someday you'd be proud of me for who I was, not what I accomplished. I thought maybe you'd see that your daughter, your niece, your family member had value beyond her job title or her paycheck or whether she produced the grandchildren you wanted. I paused, letting that truth settle over the room like dust after an explosion. I was wrong. Dad stood behind his table like a broken marionette, mouth slightly open, looking like a man who'd just been told everything he believed was a lie. His small frame seemed even smaller now, dwarfed by the magnitude of his misjudgment. Daniel found his voice first, always the golden boy even in disaster. Becca, we had no idea. If we'd known. No, I said quietly, but the word carried like a gunshot. You had no idea because you never asked. In 24 years, not one of you ever asked what I actually did for work. You decided I was a failure and built your family story around that assumption. I turned back to Dad, who looked like he was about to collapse. You want to talk about success? Tomorrow morning, I'm flying to Washington to brief the Attorney General on this operation. Next month, I'll testify before Congress about cartel infiltration of American cities. The President of the United States knows my name. Around the room, people were still frantically scrolling through their phones, trying to reconcile the woman in the simple black dress with the federal agent in the news photographs. I could hear whispered conversations. Is that really her? Look at this. She's been undercover for months. Says here she's been recommended for the Medal of Valor. But you know what real success is? I asked, my voice growing gentle, almost tender. I sleep well at night. Every night, I know that the work I do matters, that I've made a tangible difference in this world. I've saved lives, Dad. I've taken killers off the streets and drugs out of schools. I've spent my entire adult life serving something bigger than myself. I looked around the room one more time at all these people who'd known me since I was a little girl with pigtails and skin knees, but had never really seen me at all. Daniel, I called to my brother, who was still sitting stunned at the head table like a statue. Congratulations on your wedding. I genuinely hope you and Sarah will be very happy together. I walked toward the exit, my heels clicking against marble in a rhythm that sounded like victory. As I reached the door, I heard Dad's voice behind me, small and broken and completely unlike the booming presence that had commanded the room moments before. Rebecca, wait. I paused but didn't turn around. Behind me, I could hear 300 people holding their breath. I'm sorry, he whispered, and for the first time in my 43 years of life, my father sounded like he actually meant it. I know, I said, and walked out into the night. In the hotel parking lot, I checked my phone while the cool air washed over my face like absolution. 17 missed calls from reporters who'd somehow gotten my personal number. 43 text messages from colleagues congratulating me on the operation's success. And one from Director Martinez. Hayes, the president wants to meet with you Monday morning. Hope you enjoyed the wedding. I smiled for the first time all evening, started my car, and drove home to the life I'd built. The life that finally, after all these years, felt like enough.